I never imagined that the man I welcomed into our family with open arms would be the same man I'd one day watch being handcuffed, begging for mercy he never showed. Welcome to the last lesson. If this is your first time here, please subscribe for powerful real-life stories about betrayal, justice, and second chances. You won't regret it. I was 21 when I became a mother and a police officer in the same year. Strange combination, I know. Most people don't expect to see someone so young in uniform, let alone someone raising a baby alone. But life doesn't wait for you to be ready. My daughter's father left before she was born, and I refused to let that define us. I worked nights, studied during her naps, and somehow managed to graduate from the academy with her tiny hand wrapped around my finger at the ceremony. My daughter, Emma, became my entire world. Every shift I worked, every criminal I faced, every dark alley I walked down, it was all for her. To give her the life I never had. To show her that strength isn't just about muscle or a badge. It's about standing up when the world tries to push you down. She grew up fast. Too fast, maybe. At 19, she met him. His name was Ryan. Ryan Carter. 25 years old, sharp dresser, law degree, came from one of those families that owned half the town. You know the type, the ones with their names on buildings and charity galas. He had this way of walking into a room like he already owned it. Smile perfect, handshake firm, words carefully chosen. Emma brought him home for dinner one Sunday evening. I remember opening the door and seeing him standing there with flowers. Not for Emma, but for me. Lilies. My favorite, though I'd never told him that. He must have asked her. "Mrs. Rivera," he said warmly, extending his hand. "I've heard so much about you. Emma talks about you constantly." I shook his hand, felt the expensive watch on his wrist, noticed how his eyes didn't quite meet mine when he smiled. But I pushed that feeling down. I told myself I was being paranoid. Occupational hazard when you're a cop. You see danger everywhere, even where it doesn't exist. Dinner was pleasant. Too pleasant. He asked about my job, seemed genuinely interested in my case. He laughed at Emma's childhood stories, complimented the food 3 times, and offered to help with dishes. He talked about his work at his father's law firm, his goals, his plans. And then, casually, as if it had just occurred to him, he mentioned my mother. "Emma told me about your mother passing away last year," he said, his voice dropping to that soft, sympathetic tone people use around grief. "I'm so sorry for your loss. She left Emma that inheritance, didn't she? That must be such a comfort, knowing she's taken care of." Something cold touched my spine. My mother had left Emma a substantial inheritance. Her life savings, investments, the house she'd owned for 40 years. It wouldn't be accessible until Emma turned 21, just 2 years away. Very few people knew the details. I've been careful about that. "She did?" I said carefully, watching his face. "It's in a trust." "Smart." Ryan nodded. "Very smart. My father deals with estate planning. If you ever need advice on managing it when the time comes, I'd be happy to help. Family helping family, you know? Family helping family. We weren't family yet. They'd been dating for 3 months. Emma's hand found his across the table, her eyes shining with something I recognized too well. The blinding light of first love. That look that makes you ignore every warning sign because you're too busy believing in forever. I wanted to say something. I wanted to pull her aside and tell her to slow down, to be careful, to protect herself. But I'd learned the hard way that telling someone in love to be cautious only pushes them closer to the person you're warning them about. So I smiled. I said the flowers were beautiful. I thanked him for dinner. And I watched. Over the next few months, I watched a lot of things. I watched as Ryan slowly, carefully, began inserting himself into every corner of Emma's life. He convinced her to move in with him after 6 months. Why pay rent separately when we're always together anyway? He suggested she quit her part-time job at the bookstore. "You should focus on finishing your degree, baby. I'll take care of everything." He bought her a new phone, a better plan, Told her the old one was practically ancient. I watched as her friends started appearing less in her stories. As family dinners became every other week, then once a month. As her Instagram posts slowly shifted from pictures with her girlfriends to pictures of just the two of them. Always perfectly posed. Always looking magazine ready. He treats me like a queen, Mom. She told me one afternoon when I carefully, gently asked if everything was okay. He pays for everything. Surprises me with gifts. Takes me to nice restaurants. He even enrolled me in those art classes I've always wanted to take. That's wonderful, sweetheart, I said. But you know you don't need someone to pay for your life, right? You're capable on your own. Her smile faltered just slightly. I know that, but why struggle when I don't have to? He loves taking care of me. It makes him happy. It makes him happy. Not it makes me happy. It makes him happy. I let it go. Again. The engagement came 8 months after they met. He proposed at some fancy restaurant with a ring that probably cost more than my annual salary. Emma called me crying. Happy tears, she insisted, and begged me to meet her the next morning for coffee. When she showed up, I barely recognized her. She'd lost weight. Not much, but enough that her cheekbones stood out sharper. Her wrists looked fragile. She wore a cream-colored sweater I'd never seen before, pearl earrings, heels for a casual coffee date. Her hair was different too. Straightened, professional, nothing like the wild curls she used to love. Do you like the ring? She asked breathlessly, thrusting her hand across the table. The diamond was enormous. Tasteful, expensive, everything a ring should be. It's beautiful, I said honestly. Are you happy? Of course I'm happy, she said quickly. Too quickly. Mom, I'm marrying the love of my life. Ryan is everything I've ever wanted. He's successful. He's kind. He loves me. Emma. She stopped, met my eyes. Are you happy? I asked again, softer this time. For just a moment, something flickered across her face. Something uncertain, maybe even afraid. But then she smiled. That bright, practiced smile I'd been seeing more and more lately, and nodded. I'm happy, she whispered. I wanted to believe her. The wedding was 6 months later. Spring ceremony, hundreds of guests, most of whom I didn't know. Ryan's family took over the planning. Let us handle it. His mother insisted with a smile that never reached her eyes. You've done so much already, raising Emma alone. Let us give her the wedding she deserves. The wedding she deserves. As if I hadn't been enough. But I also knew it was too late. My daughter was his now. At least that's what he thought. What neither of us knew then was that in exactly 14 months, everything would change. In 14 months, my daughter would collapse at my door at 1 in the morning, and I would make a promise that would destroy the man who thought he'd won. But that night, at the wedding, I didn't know any of that yet. That night, I just danced with my daughter, held her close, and whispered the only thing I could. I love you, no matter what, always. She held me tighter than she had in months. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a voice whispered, something is coming. I just didn't know how dark it would be. The first year of Emma's marriage passed in a blur of excuses. Sorry, Mom. Can't make dinner tonight. Ryan's parents are in town. I can't talk long. Ryan's picking me up in 20 minutes. Maybe next week? Things are just really busy right now. Every conversation felt like talking to a stranger wearing my daughter's voice. She sounded distant, distracted, like she was reading from a script someone else had written. I'd ask about her art classes, and she'd change the subject. I'd mention her old friends, and she'd go quiet. The visits became shorter. The calls became less frequent. And every time I saw her, she looked a little more like a ghost of herself. I told myself to give her space. Marriage is an adjustment. She's building a new life. Stop being an overprotective cop mom and let her breathe. But cops don't ignore their instincts. And my instincts were screaming. Then came the lies. Small ones at first. She canceled lunch because she had the flu. But her voice sounded fine. She said she couldn't visit because they were traveling, but I drove past their house and saw both cars in the driveway. She wore long sleeves in summer and sunglasses indoors, always with a reasonable explanation. Air conditioning makes her cold, sensitive eyes, fashion choice. I wanted to confront her. I wanted to show up at her door and demand the truth. But I'd seen enough domestic situations in my career to know that pushing too hard, too fast, could make things worse. Victims need to feel safe enough to speak. They need to know they have somewhere to run. So I waited, and I made sure she knew my door was always open. 14 months after the wedding, at 1 a.m. on a Tuesday, she ran to that door. I was awake. I'm always awake at odd hours, which comes with the job. I was reviewing case files in my living room when I heard it. Not a knock, not a ring of the doorbell. A desperate, panicked pounding that made my blood run cold. I grabbed my service weapon out of habit and moved to the door. Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw when I opened it. Emma collapsed into my arms. Her left eye was swollen completely shut, a dark purple that looked almost black in the porch light. Blood dripped from her split lip onto my shirt. Her dress, a pale blue thing I'd never seen before, was torn at the shoulder. Bruises covered her arms like someone had gripped her hard enough to leave handprints. But it was her eyes, the one that could still open, that destroyed me. It held a kind of emptiness I'd only seen in victims who'd given up hope. "Mama," she whispered, using a name she hadn't called me since she was 6 years old. "Mama, please." Then she fainted in my arms. The next few hours moved in fragments, like a nightmare you can't wake up from. The hospital, fluorescent lights, nurses with concerned faces asking questions Emma wouldn't answer. X-rays showing old fractures in her ribs that had healed wrong. Bruises in various stages of healing covering her back, her legs, places no one would see. "This wasn't the first time," the doctor told me quietly while Emma was sedated. "Based on the scarring, I'd estimate she's been experiencing physical trauma for at least 6 months. Maybe longer. 6 months. Half a year of my daughter being beaten, and I hadn't known." I sat beside her hospital bed and held her hand, careful not to press on the bruises, and felt something inside me break and reform into something harder, colder, more dangerous than it had been before. When she woke up 3 hours later, she wouldn't look at me. "Emma," I said softly, "sweetheart, you need to tell me what happened." "I fell," she whispered, still not meeting my eyes. "Down the stairs. Clumsy me." "Emma." "I fell, Mom. It was an accident. Your ribs have been fractured before. Multiple times. You didn't fall multiple times." Silence. I took a breath, steadied my voice, slipped into the tone I used with victims. Gentle, patient, non-threatening. "Baby, I know you're scared. I know he's probably told you things, threatened you, made you believe you can't leave or no one will help you. But I'm your mother before I'm a cop. Whatever you tell me, whatever you need, I'm here. Always." She turned her face away, tears sliding down her bruised cheeks. And then, finally, she spoke. "Her name is Jessica," Emma said, her voice hollow. "She works in his office. He's been sleeping with her for 8 months. The words came slowly at first, then faster, like a dam breaking. She'd suspected for months but was afraid to confront him. When she finally did, tonight, after finding hotel receipts in his jacket, he'd exploded. Told her she was nothing without him. That she was lucky he even wanted her. That if she ever told anyone, if she ever tried to leave, he'd make sure she regretted it. "He said no one would believe me over him," Emma whispered. "His family owns half this town. His father plays golf with the mayor. What am I compared to that? Just some girl who got lucky marrying up." Then she told me the part that made my blood freeze. "He's been making me sign papers," she said. "Financial documents. He said it was normal marriage stuff, combining assets, planning for the future. But Mom, I think he's been trying to access Grandma's inheritance early. I think that's why he married me." The inheritance. Always the inheritance. I thought about Ryan's interest in it from the very beginning. The casual questions. The offers to help manage it. The way he'd rushed Emma into marriage right before she turned 21, when the trust would become accessible. He hadn't married my daughter because he loved her. He'd married her because she was worth $500,000, and he wanted it. Where is he now? I asked, my voice deadly calm. Home, I think. I waited until he fell asleep and then I ran. I didn't even grab my phone or my purse. I just ran. I stood up, already pulling out my own phone. What are you doing? Emma asked, panic in her voice. Calling this in. Getting you a protection order. Making sure he never touches you again. Mom, no. You can't. His family. I don't care about his family. You don't understand. Emma grabbed my arm with surprising strength. He has connections. His father knows everyone. They'll make this go away. They'll make it my fault. And he told me if I ever went to the police. She trailed off, fresh tears falling. He told you what, Emma? She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much darkness. He said he'd kill me. And he meant it, Mom. I know he did. I sat back down, took both her hands in mine, and looked directly into her eyes. Listen to me very carefully, I said. You're right that he has connections. You're right that his family has power. But what he doesn't have is evidence, documentation, and a police officer for a mother-in-law who knows exactly how to build a case that no lawyer, no amount of money, and no family name can make disappear. Mom! He thinks a badge is just a piece of metal. I continued, feeling that cold fury settle into determination. He thinks intimidation and money can solve anything. He thinks he's untouchable because he's always been untouchable. I stood up again, this time with purpose. He's about to learn he was wrong. Over the next 2 days, while Emma recovered at my house under the care of a domestic violence advocate I'd called in, I began to dig. I pulled hospital records with Emma's permission. I photographed every bruise, every healing wound. I interviewed neighbors who'd heard arguments, screaming, things breaking. I talked to Emma's old friends who confessed they'd been worried for months but didn't know how to help. And I found Jessica. She was 23, bright-eyed, completely unaware that Ryan was married. When I showed up at her apartment in civilian clothes and explained who I was, her face went white. He said he was single, she whispered. He said, oh my God, he's married? Very married. And very violent. Jessica started crying. Then she started talking. She told me about the promises Ryan had made. About how he'd taken her to the same restaurants, bought her the same jewelry, used the same lines he'd probably used on Emma. She showed me text messages, photos, receipts. And then she told me something that made everything click into place. I'm pregnant, she said quietly. I told him last week. He got angry, really angry. Said I was trying to trap him, that I needed to take care of it, or he'd take care of it himself. I haven't heard from him since. I drove home with Jessica's statement recorded, evidence logged, and a plan forming in my mind. When I walked in, Emma was sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop open. I've been looking at the papers he made me sign, she said without looking up. Mom, I think it's worse than we thought. I think he's been forging signatures, moving money, setting up accounts in both our names. If this is what I think it is, it's fraud, I finished. Inheritance fraud and possibly identity theft. Emma finally looked up at me, and for the first time in months, I saw something other than fear in her eyes. I saw anger. What do we do? She asked. I sat down across from her, pulled out my notebook filled with 2 days of investigation, and smiled. We build a case, I said, and then we watch his entire world burn. That night, Ryan called Emma's phone, which I'd retrieved from their house with a police escort. He left 7 voicemails. The first 3 were apologetic, sweet, promising it would never happen again. The fourth was angry, demanding she come home. The fifth was threatening. By the seventh, he was desperate. Emma, baby, please, you're making a mistake. You know I love you. Just come home and we'll forget this ever happened. Don't do anything stupid. Don't talk to anyone. Remember what I said would happen if you did. I saved every message. 3 days after Emma collapsed at my door, Ryan showed up at my house. I was ready. He pulled into my driveway in his expensive car, climbed out in his expensive suit, and walked up to my door with the confidence of someone who'd never faced real consequences in his life. I opened the door before he could knock. "Where is she?" he demanded. No greeting, no pretense. "Somewhere safe. She's my wife. She needs to come home. She's an adult who made the choice to leave an abusive situation. She's exactly where she needs to be." His jaw tightened. "Abusive? Is that what she told you?" She's confused. Probably hurt from her fall. She didn't fall, Ryan. And we both know it. For just a second, his mask slipped. His eyes went cold, calculating, dangerous. "You need to be very careful here," he said quietly. "My father is close personal friends with your police chief. One phone call and your career is over. So I suggest you send my wife home, and we all forget this misunderstanding ever happened." I smiled. Not a friendly smile. The smile I use right before I read someone their rights. "Is that a threat?" "It's reality." "Here's a different reality," I said calmly. "Your wife has documented injuries. She has medical records showing a pattern of abuse. She has witness statements. And she has a mother who happens to be very good at her job." His face darkened. "You have no idea what you're starting." "Actually, I do. And Ryan," I leaned forward slightly, "you're right about one thing. Your father does know important people. But the thing about important people is they don't like being associated with men who beat their wives, commit fraud, and threaten police officers. You can't prove anything." "Can't I?" Something in my voice must have warned him because he took a step back. "This isn't over," he said. "No," I agreed. "It's just beginning." He left, tires squealing, confidence shaken but still intact. He thought he'd won because he always won. He didn't know I'd already contacted the district attorney. He didn't know Jessica had agreed to testify. He didn't know about the forensic accountant reviewing the financial documents. He didn't know that while he'd been threatening me, I'd been building the case that would destroy him. That night, Emma and I sat on my porch watching the sunset. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. I put my arm around her shoulders, careful of the bruises that were finally starting to fade. "Now," I said, "we make sure he never hurts anyone again." In the distance, storm clouds were gathering. But for the first time in 14 months, I wasn't afraid of the storm. I was the storm. They say justice is blind, but I learned it has eyes. Eyes that see everything when you know where to look. And I was just getting started looking. If this story is hitting home, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss what happens next. Building a case against someone with money and connections isn't like the cop shows on TV. The slow, methodical, frustrating work. Every piece of evidence has to be airtight. Every witness statement has to be documented properly. Every procedure has to be followed exactly, because one mistake means a good lawyer can tear the whole thing apart. And Ryan had very good lawyers. But I had something better. I had the truth and I had time. The first person I needed to convince was my own police chief. Chief Morrison had been on the force for 30 years. He'd known Ryan's father, Thomas Carter, since they were in college together. They played golf every Thursday. Their wives had lunch together. When I requested a meeting to discuss opening an investigation into Ryan Carter, Morrison's face told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't going to be easy. "Officer Rivera," he said carefully, closing his office door. "I heard about your daughter. I'm very sorry, but you have to understand, this is a conflict of interest. You can't be involved in any investigation regarding your son-in-law. I know that, sir. That's why I'm asking you to assign it to someone else. Detective Barnes, maybe. He's good with domestic cases. Morrison sat down heavily, rubbing his temple. This is the Carter family we're talking about. Thomas Carter donates to the Police Benevolent Fund. He's friends with the mayor, the district attorney, half the town council. If we go after his son without ironclad evidence— I have ironclad evidence, I interrupted, sliding a folder across his desk. Medical records showing a pattern of abuse over 6 months. Witness statements from neighbors who heard the violence. Financial documents suggesting inheritance fraud and identity theft. And testimony from Ryan's mistress, who's pregnant with his child and willing to testify that he threatened her when she told him. Morrison opened the folder. His expression changed as he read, page after page of documentation I'd spent 2 weeks compiling. Jesus, he muttered finally. There's more, I continued. I contacted a forensic accountant. The financial documents Emma signed? Ryan's been systematically siphoning money from her accounts, setting up shell LLCs, preparing to drain her inheritance the moment it became accessible. We're talking about felony fraud, identity theft, forgery. This isn't just domestic violence anymore, sir. This is organized financial crime. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. If we do this, he said slowly, Thomas Carter will come after this department with everything he has. He'll call in every favor he's ever earned. He'll try to destroy careers. I know, including yours. I know. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the moment he made his decision. Barnes gets the case, he said. You stay away from the investigation entirely. Any contact between you and Ryan Carter, you document it and report it immediately. Understood. Yes, sir. And Rivera? He closed the folder. I hope you know what you're doing. So do I, sir. Detective Marcus Barnes was a 15-year veteran with a specialty in white-collar crime and a reputation for being relentless. When Morrison assigned him the case, I watched relief flash across his face. He'd been wanting to investigate the Carter family's business practices for years, but had never had cause. Now he had cause. Over the next month, while Emma stayed with me and attended therapy 3 times a week, Barnes built a case that went far beyond what I'd uncovered. The forensic accountant discovered that Ryan hadn't just been stealing from Emma. He'd been embezzling from his father's law firm, using client trust accounts to fund his lifestyle and cover gambling debts Emma never knew about. The mistress, Jessica, provided text messages showing Ryan had been running similar fraud schemes on 2 other women he'd been seeing simultaneously. And then Barnes found something that changed everything. Ryan's father, Thomas Carter, knew. He'd known about the abuse. He'd known about the fraud. He'd been helping cover it up, moving money between accounts, paying off witnesses, using his connections to bury complaints. When Barnes presented the evidence to the district attorney, a different one than Thomas played golf with, the DA's face went pale. This is racketeering, the DA said quietly. This is a RICO case. That's when I knew Ryan wasn't just going to lose his freedom. He was going to lose everything. The arrest happened on a Thursday morning. I wasn't there. Conflict of interest meant I had to stay away. But Barnes called me the moment it was done. We got him at his office, Barnes said, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. In front of his colleagues, his father, everyone. He actually tried to run. Made it to the parking lot before 2 officers tackled him. I closed my eyes, let the moment wash over me. Thank you, Marcus. Thank your daughter, he said. She's the bravest victim I've ever worked with. Most people in her situation never come forward. She didn't just come forward. She testified before the grand jury, provided documents, helped us understand the financial trail. She's a fighter, Rivera, just like her mom. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I sat in the gallery every single day in uniform watching. Emma sat in the front row with the victim advocate beside her. Ryan's family filled the other side of the courtroom, their expensive lawyers working overtime to save him. It didn't work. The prosecution presented medical records, financial documents, witness testimony. Jessica testified about the pregnancy, the threats, the lies. Neighbors testified about the screaming they'd heard, the crashes, the times they'd almost called the police but didn't want to get involved. Emma testified last. She walked to the stand in a simple blue dress, head held high, and told her story. Every horrible detail, every broken promise. Every night she'd cried herself to sleep wondering if this was the night he'd finally kill her. Ryan stared at her the entire time, trying to intimidate her one last time. She never looked at him. Not once. When she finished, the courtroom was completely silent. Then the prosecutor asked one final question. "Why did you stay as long as you did?" Emma's voice didn't waver. "Because he made me believe I was nothing without him. But I learned something important. He was nothing without me. Without my inheritance, my silence, my fear. The moment I took those things away, he was just a cruel, small man who never loved anyone but himself." The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: domestic violence, assault, fraud, identity theft, embezzlement, witness intimidation. Ryan Carter was sentenced to 15 years in prison. His law license was revoked. His assets were seized to pay restitution. His father, Thomas, faced separate charges for his role in the cover-up. He lost his law practice, his reputation, everything he'd spent 40 years building. The day the verdict was read, I watched Ryan's face as the judge pronounced sentence. All that confidence, all that arrogance, all that certainty that he was untouchable, gone. He looked small, powerless. Exactly what he'd made Emma feel for so long. As the bailiffs led him away, he looked at me one last time. I smiled. That evening, Emma and I sat on my porch again, watching another sunset. She'd gained back the weight she'd lost. Her art was hanging in a local gallery. She'd reconnected with her friends, enrolled back in school, started building the life she should have had all along. "How do you feel?" I asked her. She thought about it for a moment. "Free," she said finally. "For the first time in 2 years, I feel free. And angry. Not at myself anymore, but at him, for what he took from me. But also," she paused, "proud. Of myself. Of you. Of how we fought back. You did the hardest part," I told her. "You survived. You testified. You refused to let him silence you. We did it together," she corrected. "You kept your promise, Mom. You protected me." I pulled her close. This daughter I'd raised alone. This woman who'd been broken and put herself back together stronger than before. "Always," I said. 6 months later, Emma received her inheritance. The full amount, untouched, exactly as my mother had intended. She used part of it to start a foundation for domestic violence survivors, providing legal aid, safe housing, and support for women trying to leave abusive relationships. She named it the Last Lesson Foundation. Because, she explained at the opening ceremony, the last lesson my ex-husband taught me was the most important one. That I was never nothing. I was always everything. I just needed to remember it. Ryan, meanwhile, sat in a cell, stripped of everything he'd valued. His freedom, his reputation, his family's money, his power over others. And Jessica? She had her baby, a beautiful girl. She moved to another state, started over, and last I heard, she was doing well. She sent Emma a card once, thanking her for having the courage to speak up, because it gave her the courage to leave too. As for me, I learned something I never expected. I'd spent my entire career believing that my badge was about upholding the law, about being impartial and objective and fair. And it is about those things. But it's also about something else. It's about keeping promises. It's about standing between the vulnerable and the violent. It's about using whatever power you have, a badge, a voice, the truth, to make sure that the people who hurt others face consequences. Ryan thought a badge was just a piece of metal, a symbol of authority he could undermine with money and connections. He was wrong. A badge is a promise. Promise to protect. Promise to serve. A promise that justice, real justice, isn't just for the rich and powerful. It's for everyone. And when someone hurts my family, when someone hurts any victim who can't fight back alone, that badge becomes something more than metal. It becomes a weapon. Not a weapon of violence, but a weapon of truth, of evidence, of relentless, patient, methodical justice that no amount of money can stop. To anyone watching this who's survived abuse, who's living in fear, who's been told they're nothing, you're not nothing. You're everything. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And there are people who will fight for you, who will believe you, who will stand beside you until justice is done. Don't give up. Don't stay silent. And don't ever let anyone make you forget your worth, because that's the last lesson worth learning. You are stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and worthy of so much more than someone who hurts you could ever understand. My daughter learned that lesson, and it saved her life. Thank you for watching this journey with me. If the story moved you, please subscribe to The Last Lesson for more true stories about survival, justice, and second chances. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you are never nothing.